Lamptey Show. My name's Joey, and I'm joined by Paul.
All right, mate.
And by Neil.
Hello.
And by Lawrence.
Hey, Joey.
2 games, much to talk about. Moments of the week to start. Paul?
The point...
He's gone already.
Yes.
Sorry.
It's suitable.
The moment where Luke Thomas is through one-on-one with the keeper on Friday night, and it's... Talk about moment, it's literally the moment before he takes his shot. Because at that point, before he takes that shot, everything's still available. It's 1-1. We've come from behind. For the first time in the game, we're clearly on top. He's through one-on-one with the keeper. At that point, anything could happen between now and the end of the season. That's my moment.
My moment of the week is watching you develop a new... add Luke Thomas to the folder that you call players I don't like now.
Obviously, we'll get on to the fact that obviously being through one-on-one with the keeper on the right-hand side, being left-footed, in a position you've been on probably about once every 190 minutes over the season. I would have thought by now he'd have worked out a way to put the little round thing past the fucking keeper and into the big netty thing. But clearly it's Burge's fault for the fact he didn't score, or it's someone else's fault for the fact he didn't score. Or the referee's fault for the fact it's never Luke Thomas's fault for the fact that he keeps getting in the same position and the outcome is exactly the same every time. And it's just it's getting a bit frustrating, the fact that he hasn't actually taken that step forward. And I do feel a bit sorry for him. I think he's at that point, and we've discussed this if you listen to this pod since the start, you'll know we've discussed this about a lot of players. I think he's getting to the bit where he's obviously less effective at the moment. He's not playing particularly well, and I think he's just knackered. But there comes a point where it's like you've got to score that chance. You've got to start putting that away, because the fact you don't is clearly a massive flaw in your game, and it's beginning to get on my nerves.
What have you got against blondes?
They just have more fun. I just can't handle the fun.
First Jack Grimmer, now Luke Thomas. Lovely lads to a man, but you can't stand them. It's outrageous. Neil, your moment of the week.
Moment of the week. You would think that I would use this opportunity to get on my soapbox and have a go about all the grief that Lee Burge got. And you'd be right. That's exactly what I'm going to do, guys. I'm going to have a word.
Because you were trying to think of something better while you...
Yeah. that is it. Let's move on from this. Okay. Oh, mate, there was just something really distasteful about it. And I think my issue... I have a few issues with it. So I don't have a problem with people getting annoyed at the football and people being impulsive and being frustrated and making sounds. I mean, I'd rather it wasn't as angsty the other day, but that's just the way the game panned out, and everybody was quite frustrated, and you could sense that from the crowd. What I have issues with are sort of focusing in on single players, especially your own players, and crucifying them, and audibly your entire fan base making it very known to that single player that you have an issue with them. That, like we did with Vincenti last season and like we've done with many players in the past, does not sit well with me at all. And mainly because, do we not want that player to improve, or do we not want that player to actually perform? Surely that's all we want from them. So the notion that when he made that mistake, everybody then thought it was a good idea to start ironically cheering and taking the piss out of the bloke and essentially humiliating him for the rest of the match. I'm still livid about it now. I just think it's a moronic behaviour, and I know there's kind of a mass mentality thing going on where some people do it and you kind of whipped up into the pantomime of the situation and it doesn't seem real, but it is real. It's a guy on the pitch, an individual, an isolated guy, but especially a football player, a goalkeeper who's already struggling with his confidence, then being treated in that way was just rotten, I thought. And I just think, I don't know how you go about doing this, but I just hope he gets a good reception in the next game. Just people start to just give him some bloody love, because whether you think you don't like him as a player or you don't think he's playing particularly well because he is going through a bad patch, he's still our player and he's still playing in goal for us. So surely we want to give him every opportunity to perform. That's my soapbox.
It just, well, you couldn't put it any better. It feels now that the best thing that could happen for all parties is that he leaves at the end of his contract, because it's now clear that COV fans don't care about him playing well at any point. They're just waiting to jump on him when he has a bad patch. Like, it just feels like there's too many people that just have completely written him off, that I kind of think, well, it's not fair that you'd be getting kicked in when you're playing badly. It's just daft, isn't it? You kind of think, well, maybe we just have to move on from this one.
And that's it. And I think people just can't kind of separate their personal sort of opinion about him as a footballer and their judgment of him as a footballer. And there are plenty of people out there who have just got this view that he's not a very good keeper. I'm not one of them. I saw him at, we're talking about the League Two goalkeeper of the season last year. We're talking about a guy who, up until that Walsall mistake, people were touting as our player of the season this year. He's now going through a bad patch of form. That's not ideal, but it doesn't make him fundamentally a bad keeper. You've got that. But then you've got people just treating him badly.
Yeah,
they're not just watching him. They're not just like having that bad judgment about him. They're actually actively treating him badly. And then obviously you've got the social media element where people just don't seem to think that these are real people and they just treat them like shit on social media. And it's just all very horrible.
Laurie?
Well, I'm quite glad that my one hasn't been taken, because I thought it would have been taken straight away. I was kind of deciding whether Bayliss's pass for Thomas's miss was better than Bayliss's pass for Sterling's cross to Huula. And I think after watching them both quite a few times this evening, I think the second one's actually a better pass, because it goes past, like, for those of you who haven't seen the highlights or were at the game, he's kind of relatively central and quite not very far into Burton's half, and then just plays a pass that absolutely no one on that pitch has seen apart from him, that kind of goes quite close to some defenders, about 2 or 3 of them. No one's quite close enough to block it, and then Dujon Sterling's just there to collect it behind the lines. He pulls it back and Huula gets the shot away. But it's just like, it was just like a FIFA pass. It was just mad, and it was like the third one he'd done in the game, and so enjoyable to watch a COV player doing that.
What I found really frustrating about that is I gave him loads of praise on Twitter because he had been brilliant with those passes, and still it's like, no, he's not very good. No, let's look at the flaws of his game. And you're like, just can't we enjoy him? Like, there was a moment going on a bit from what Neil said. There was a bit in the first half, right near the end of the first half, where Mason was right in front of us. And he probably should have put in a cross, but he didn't put in a cross. And everyone was just berating him. And you're just like, well, how's that going to help him? Why do that now? Why have you picked on Mason, who's had an all right first half? Why is that your man? And then, as I said, Bayliss was those two. Yeah, he got caught out for the first goal. But other than that, he had a really good game. And those passes were immense. Yet you still get people on Twitter going, no, he's not very good. No, not having it. Shut up.
I always think an interesting test of these things is I watched it with 2 lads that I work with, and we had no sound on, so there was no benefit of Sky relentlessly wanking Tom Bayliss off and making it really obvious. And the pair of them, one of which was Danny Fox's cousin, interestingly, both of them were like, who is that? And it was like, was Tom Bayliss. They were like, you can tell he's like a real head and shoulders above. They were like, is he your player? He's blah, blah, you're like, yeah. Because you'd said, Dujon Sterling, Chelsea player, blah, blah, blah. They were like, is he yours? Because he looks like much better than most of the people out there. And I always think if neutrals hearing a game without commentary and whatever can spot it in over sort of pub chat or whatever, then he's probably playing all right, ain't he?
Yeah, no bias at all. It's just no context. Just let's have a look at the player and judge him on what you're seeing. Whereas you've got people out there who, COV fans, they've developed opinions over time, and it's very hard for them to change, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the other thing with him is he's playing alongside some players who aren't anywhere near as good as he is, and that you could. There was a spot. Well, I think all of us have said that Liam Kelly's played really well recently. Friday had a bit of a stinker.
Yeah.
And it was just like Tom Bayliss is playing along people like Tom Davis, who football just seems an anomaly to him. Bakayoko, again, you're not sure what you're going to get out of him. Bayliss is just consistent. But sometimes he'll play a pass and it goes to the opposition because someone's not read what he's trying to do, or he'll dwell on the ball too long because he's waiting for someone to make a move and they're not making it. And you could just think, if he was playing alongside better players, if he'd have played in that Armstrong team with Armstrong, Jacob Murphy and that lot, then he'd probably be even better. He's only going to get better when he's got players around him who are doing better movement off the ball, who are actually playing with balls in better areas. It's just, I mean, already he's got 8 goals. I think he's got 8 in 60 appearances, which is just a really good return from a 19-year-old central midfielder. Like, let's just embrace the kid, because he's not going to be here next season because he's too good for League One. He's just clearly a championship player. So try and enjoy him instead of sort of trying to find every fault with this 19-year-old gangly kid who's come in the last year and a half, been absolutely brilliant for us.
And people kind of telling him off for not kind of tackling enough. Actually, just before they scored, he was responsible for an unbelievable tackle when they were on the break. And
insanely good.
Flying in out of nowhere and wins the ball back for us. So people who say that, he bottles tackles, it's just complete rubbish. Like, and equally, like what you said on Twitter earlier, Neil, about Maddison, like, I don't really care how good he is at tackling. Like, it's not really his job.
I really do. I think that's what marks him out. I think that's what makes him such an unusual player, is that I think he's not a mercurial, like, number 10 who floats in and out of games. He's very firmly like a central midfielder who's not a liability and like routinely wins the ball back, like, really impressively. Them telescope legs are able to, like, snuff out counter-attacks and then start off again. To me, I think he's got everything. I don't think he's the best player in the world at any particular thing, but it's very rare you see a player who's got pretty much everything to his game. I think he's fabulous. You just mentioned Maddison there. I'm going to wrap things up with my moment of the week. Did anyone, on a much lighter note, obviously, did anyone see the highlights of Leicester against whoever they won 3-1, didn't they, on Match of the Day?
Yeah, was it Cardiff?
Cardiff, I think, yeah.
I made that up.
James Maddison having the time of his life laying through balls for Cardiff. There was maybe 5 or 6 passes where he doesn't even look up. He just knocks them into an area of space, and you just think it must be such a joy for him to have come through and then finally to have met like his soulmate on the pitch.
But he's got that, but he's also got Maguire from corners. It's like, bloody hell, no wonder he's creating 81 chances this year. Just drop it onto his head every single time.
Yeah, but some of the passes were just totally exquisite, like really David Silva, like really beautifully weighted. But it is so much easier when there's someone who's just like, as long as you put it in front of me somewhere, it will become a chance. Yeah, it was just really good fun. It's really nice to see him. I know it's silly because it's Leicester and you're meant to hate Leicester. It's just nice to see him getting the credit he deserves and the recognition, and a player that you think, God, he's going to step up and be amazing. You're now looking at him and going, Jesus, like, the world's your oyster, isn't it? Like, you can do anything you want. Yeah.
It was Fulham, by the way.
Yeah, you're right, yeah. Okay. Right, so we're going to do Accrington. We're going to get back in the way back machine and go to the past in a very real sense with wherever Accrington's concerned. Paul, you were there. Tell us what you want to tell us about it.
Well, for the first 56 minutes, my moment of the week was going to be the fact it hadn't pissed it down, because it did look like it was going to. And then we scored Mason won a really good tackle. I'm not going to describe the game. Was for the first 56 minutes, the game just went. It was a bit like eating mashed potato. It's you either love it or hate it. It's just there. And that was the game against Accrington. It was just there. It was like nothing really happened for 56, 60 minutes. Then Mason won a 50-50 tackle. He ran forward, passed the ball to Bright. Bright finally beat someone on the edge of the area, rolled it into the bottom corner with a lovely finish. And then after that, Accrington imploded a little bit. We had about 3 or 4 more chances through Hawula. Luke Thomas came on, probably should have scored. Probably could have been 4-0 in the end because we were just completely all over them because Accrington sort of gave up the ghost because they're a bit of a funny side at the moment. There you go. That's Accrington.
That's really your entire Accrington roundup.
Mate, for about 60 minutes, nothing of note happened. I can go through it. We can discuss it. It's like Bright did his usual thing. Yeah, we don't need to discuss Bright doing what Bright does. Dominic Hine was magnificent. Again, probably don't need to discuss. There was nothing new happening in that game that we haven't discussed.
Well, I wanted to ask you, in light of the fact that now EnoRedCardy has scored 3 goals, and 3 goals of a level of which, not tap-ins, they are largely where he has had to be quite special to some description to have scored them. My question to you was going to be, are we a little bit hard on him?
I mean, he did nothing for an hour, then he scored a great goal. That's fine. If you want him in that role and he does that, if he did that every week, then we wouldn't be harsh on him. The fact is, but yeah, he wouldn't be at this level. That's a fine point. But he's quite a difficult one to pin down because he has the ability. It's just he doesn't do it. So no one's saying he's a terrible footballer because he's not a terrible footballer. The question is, can he be effective? Against Accrington, he won the game. There were other times in the game where we're talking about Tom Bailey's tackles. Tom Bailey's made an amazing tackle on this one guy who was doing a slalom run. He then passed the ball to Bright and the whole thing broke down. And sometimes the game breaks down around him. Sometimes he slows it down. But as I said, we've discussed this on previous pods. He had that game where everything went through him and everyone went to a snail's pace. And then he scored. But he did that thing that you talked about a lot. He got the ball 5 yards outside the area, skinned his man, which he can do with utter ease, and then bent the ball into the bottom corner. That's why he's sort of at Wolves. That's why Wolves haven't sold him. There is that potential in there. It's getting... against... don't want to ruin Laurie's thing for Burton. Against Burton, he did pretty much chuff all and got sent off. He's just... That's what he is, isn't he? I mean, maybe he's unfortunate the fact we've got him on loan in January. If we'd have had him the whole season and now he would play 20, 30 games at this point, maybe we would be seeing a far better player. And maybe that's what he needs next season, is to go somewhere, go out on loan in July, so he's fully included in that team system by the time they start in August, and then he'll be flying. But on that game, he was the match winner, but he was also pretty innocuous up to that point. But like I said, so were the rest of the team. The only person who came out of the game with lots of credit was Hyam. Hyam was brilliant. And then, the rest of them, it's like Sterling's a good player. We know that. It was just that sort of... Again, Accrington didn't have a shot. So you can't even sort of really talk about Burge before the Burton game, because the 3 wins we've had recently against Rochdale, against Walsall, and against Accrington, they've barely had a shot, and that goes down to the midfield and the defence working extremely hard. Again, we've discussed that recently. They're a good defensive unit. That's it. There's just nothing new.
Your outright refusal. I mean, if I'd have known that we'd got a remit of not repeating ourselves, this podcast would have shut down years ago.
It's repeating things which was repeated a lot in the last couple of weeks, and that was the Accrington game. You got your quibbles about the players; they were all manifest in that game. But when we were played well in the last 30 minutes, we absolutely destroyed Accrington, and the good players came to the fore. Hawula did his thing. Bakayoko still, I can't get my head around Bakayoko. I just don't know if he's just worth the effort or not. It's really hard to tell. But he does. He entertains defenders. He does do that thing where he wins more flick. I think that his disadvantage is because he's playing as low striker. He wins quite a lot of flick-ons, but they just go straight to the opposition because there's no one near him. He puts himself about. Technically, I don't think anyone knows what the ball's going to do when it gets to his feet. But again, it's just sort of that was the Accrington game. It's just a really... I know it's always like, it's easier, to some extent it's easier when you lose because it's like you've got things to criticise. And it's not a case of we won, therefore, I don't want to praise anyone. The players deserved the praise for the fact that they kept their shape and they did all those sort of nice, non-interesting football things. But it wasn't an interesting game, and it wasn't particularly a good performance. It was just enough to beat that Accrington side. The Burton side is far more interesting.
Well, that's what I was going to say, Thomas. So you said there that things kind of nothing really happened until we got to like the 30 minutes to go when things turned on, which was pretty much when he came into the pitch. I mean, what did he have any impact? Did he noticeable impact? How did Shipley do? How did Thomas do when he came on? That sort of stuff.
Shipley was fine. Shipley. He's going for a bit of a good spell where he's not giving the ball away as much. But as an attacking force, obviously you're a bit more one pace without Thomas. Thomas happened to come on as we scored. He didn't influence. He just happened to have. If we hadn't made that substitution, that goal we would have still scored that goal. Yeah. Does that make sense? It wasn't like, they're now. And to be fair to Accrington, their left back is probably one of their best players, and he had Luke Thomas in his pocket. So Luke Thomas didn't do a lot, and then Hawula pulled the ball back, and he was about 10 yards out, centre of goal. Should have scored.
Mate, should have scored that, shouldn't he? That was that was an easy one.
But that was the only time you actually realised that Luke Thomas was on the pitch in a positive. I said that their left back had him because he wasn't quick. He wasn't their left back. I think Dominic was talking about him last week. Went to Ipswich and has come back. He was a quick, competent footballer. So Luke Thomas couldn't skin him because he didn't have that pace advantage. So it was a bit of he just came on as we scored. I'd say it just wasn't an interesting. It's just these. Well, I think Laurie's made this comment recently where it's like sometimes if you want to get promoted, you've got to win a certain amount of games, 1-0, and they're not interesting games. That was the Accrington game. We won 1-0. We were the better team. But I don't need to think about it ever again.
So you're saying we're going to get promoted?
I'm saying if Luke Thomas would have put his chance against Burton away, I'd be a lot more confident now.
Isn't it quite interesting that Luke Thomas was dropped in the first place? Does anyone have any more insight on that?
Well, that's a good question. Do we?
Yeah. Well, I mean, from what we understand, he was acting,
Sky sources.
Yeah, Sky sources. If you're in club call, basically, he was acting
That's one
like
for the kids.
Yeah, he was acting like Billy Big Bollocks and. Sort of Mark Robbins, you understand, put him on the bench to basically show him who was boss. Which he's not playing particularly well either at the moment, is he? He isn't as good as he was earlier in the season. That happens to this is his first full season. These things happen. So it probably didn't do him any harm to be out of the team either. I don't think we missed him.
I know I overvalue this in attacking players. I just think he gives us so much defensively. So I think
didn't have a lot going for
him. No, and I agree. So. But there was it. But I think I agree with you. I think I sort of always figured that what would happen is as the season went on, he would become more prolific because he would hit some sort of rhythm. And I agree with you. I'm taking the piss out of you earlier about he's now your boo boy or whatever. But I think there is a sort of quite a logical progression of, wow, look at this exciting kid. Oh, he's got more consistent. He's added a really strong defensive side of his game. But he's plateaued a bit, hasn't he? And actually the stuff that's really important would have been him getting 10 goals this season. Jacob Murphy very easily got to 10, 11 goals despite not playing every game. And Luke Thomas has scored 2, 3.
It's also
might be looking to get
maybe.
5, and you kind of think actually as good. I do think he's been a very, very, very good player for us. One of our best players this season. But it is very disappointing that he hasn't. Like you say, you made a really good point that you've made before about and Mo Salah does it. Funnily enough, that insistence of dragging it onto his left gives players the opportunity to come back and block him, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, we discussed this, if Laurie can remember, during the actual game at Rochdale, where. I don't remember a player ever having so many shots or crosses blocked. And it's because he takes too long. He just takes too many touches. And again, without wanting to ruin the Burton game for anyone, Burton's goal, their first goal, we had a similar opportunity in a similar location where all Luke Thomas had to do was pull the ball back from the byline. He takes 3, 4, 5 touches, and the ball's blocked by the first man and goes out for a corner. And it's that. He doesn't do anything the first time. He doesn't do anything quickly enough. So when he's trying to take a shot, he'll keep going. Oh, his shot's blocked. And it's not a coincidence that he has so many shots blocked. It happens every single game. And that's because he's a quick player, but he's not quick of thought. And those sort of things where you think, well, okay, he should have learnt by now that you can't take that many touches because your shots get blocked. They're still getting blocked. His crosses are still getting blocked. And that's my issue with Thomas now, is he hasn't taken that next step forward. You looked at Sterling at the start of the season. Everyone remembers that step that Sterling's taken. As much as we're praising Bayliss, it has been like, oh, he's now stepped up. He's actually made that realisation that he's as good or better than quite a lot of players. You watch around the team, Hawula's taken a step up as the season's gone on.
Has he?
I think he has. I think he's become more and more effective. Okay, he's probably say he's being played more, but I think he's now our first choice player in that position. And it was interesting on Saturday when we needed a goal that Hawula was the one who was placed up front. He took Bakayoko off. Hawula has been given more and more responsibility, and I think he's taken to that. As like the transfer window went through in January, the players we sold, Hawula has become more and more integral to the way we play. My issue with Thomas is he came in at a very high level, but he's plateaued basically since Christmas. And he hasn't taken that next step forward, and he hasn't learned how to do those next things, which are going to take him from being a goodish League One player, which he is at the moment. But I think earlier this season, Derby will take him back. If Derby are in the playoffs now, I can't see him getting in Derby's first team next season. I think he is a League One player. He probably needs another season in League One, but he needs to start adding those bits to his game.
Yeah, if you start comparing Thomas and Hawula, the influence and sort of impact this season, I don't think there is really a comparison, is there? I mean, versus what they've outputted. I know we've got all criticisms with for Thomas's finishing and all that stuff, but even so, I mean, his influence over every game and in sort of involvement in every game is so, I'd say, far higher than Hawula. Hawula, maybe once every 3 games, will be somewhat involved, and that feels like faint praise, and it really is meant to be faint praise because he's only just. I'm pretty disappointed with him, I've got to be honest. I think he's very rarely involved in the match, and when he does get involved, it's only for like a fleeting moment here or there. I can't remember last time I saw Hawula have a kind of a game where he actually played well basically throughout. Whereas I still think with Thomas, as much as I agree with you on his finishing and how frustrating it can be and his kind of decision making, I think the involvement level of that guy, he is regularly kind of our main outlet, and he's always involved, and he's always causing a threat. So I get your point. I was just trying to caveat that with if we're making a comparison between those two, I still don't think there is really a comparison.
I understand where you're coming from, but I think the argument to that is Hawula is our top goal scorer,
and that's the thing.
And it's meaningful impact, and that's the. I agree with you. Hawula you've never watched him for 90 minutes and said that actually that guy stood out, but in effectual ways, he is more effective because he's scoring the goals and he's actually winning us points. My issue with Thomas is involved a lot, but a lot of it doesn't go anywhere, and that's where that's an issue. If he had the composure that Hawula has, then he probably would be on about 15 goals this season, and that's his issue. And I know that's sort of what you're saying, but sort of Hawula, while I agree he's not as impactful for a longer periods, the fact is he's been involved in more goals.
I also, but by the same measure, sorry, Joe.
Go on.
I was just going to say, by the same measure, if we're going pound for pound, then you look at Bright, who is only just been here for a couple of months. He's already got 3 goals. He's set up a few. I mean, if you probably, I'm not going to throw any maths out there because I haven't looked at the numbers, but if that's our measure and that's how we're going to compare the players, then it feels a bit almost harsh to be criticising him and then giving Hawula praise. I mean, I don't want to simplify your argument because it's really nuanced, and I do get what you're saying, but I just think there's so much more to it than than just those numbers. And if you look at the context around their performances as well, I just think there is a kind of a different sort of, there's like a pecking order in terms of performance. And I personally, I'd have Thomas Stillworm far higher than Huula this year.
What I was going to say very quickly is I think that the problem for both of them, and then I suggest we move on to Laurie before Paul encroaches any further on the Burton game. I think the problem that for Huula and for Thomas is I think it would be easy to countenance them both playing the way that they have been if they were playing either side of a striker that had scored a load of goals. So I think Thomas's impact reminds me a little bit, and not directly, of Jim O'Brien. I like the fact that if you had a more balanced team, he would be in it for me, because I think he gives you a level of dynamism and grit that I really like, but obviously that's a thing that I quite like anyway. And I sort of don't mind that Huula drifts in and out of games, because actually he has scored 7 goals for us, which in a team where we had got a striker who'd have scored 16... actually is a pretty alright return. He might, if we accept that he sort of comes in off the left and he'd finish the season scoring 11, 12 goals, that's not a bad return for a player out wide, ostensibly. But all of this needs to happen in a team where you've got a striker that's scoring. And without that happening, it means that both of their goal returns are insufficient for us, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think that's a really good point, because, much as I agree that Thomas is indecisive, takes so many touches, all the shots get blocked, if he does have that striker, maybe he doesn't feel such a responsibility to even shoot in the first place. Maybe he's looking more for the person whose job it is to score goals, whereas he's been in a team all season where you've either had JCH up front or a kind of varying rotation of people who don't score goals. So that's got to be somewhere in his thinking, when a lot of times we have always been looking to Thomas to be like, can you get us out of this mess? And that's maybe meant that he's played, maybe I'm just reaching a little bit here, but maybe that's meant he's tried a little bit too hard to do things that he isn't good at, like scoring. Maybe if we'd had an actual McNulty up there, then Thomas would have just been providing assist after assist after assist. But I think that would have changed the dynamic if we had a proper...
Apart from when he threw on goal, obviously. Still, please put those away, I would say.
Please do.
That would be good, wouldn't it? So Burton then felt like a huge anticlimax, because for the first time in weeks I thought, we're going to do all right here, aren't we? And then Laurie?
Yeah, I'm just intrigued by this new approach to reporting on the match, which I'm really excited by. I'm going to be over in 45 seconds. To
be fair, that was half an hour ago, those 45 seconds.
Yeah, very
only because
true,
me and Neil worked hard to drag it out.
I was really excited as well. I go with my mate, and he slowly brought me up to a pitch of fevered excitement for the game, just talking about how close we were to the playoffs. It was seriously disappointing, because even now we're still pretty close. We're kind of in 5 points, and we're in this little mini league with a few teams around us, so it's not ridiculous to think that we could still do it, but it would have been really nice to be within 2 points now. There were a few things of note. Tom Davies, unfortunately for me, really did look like he hadn't played much football recently.
Or ever.
Our centre-backs have a lot of the ball. That's how we play. And he was feeling very generous about sharing it with the byline and Burton. So it just, lots of things were breaking down from Tom Davies. Our fans seem to get on Mason's back a little bit, which I found strange. Maybe he's done something to piss people off. But he was getting quite a lot of shit off people. And both managers seem to think that we started better than Burton. I didn't really notice that either team was particularly on top. I'm running out of patience with our set pieces. It's just embarrassing how bad they are. And against Burton, they were just unforgivably shit from start to finish, just whether it's a corner or a free kick.
They were quite good for Burton, though, because they had about 3 chances from our set pieces, didn't they?
That's what I mean. That was their main outlet for attacks, was our attacking corners or free kicks. and so they would frequently just like sprint down the pitch after we failed to beat the first man in like numerous different ways. What else happened in that first half? Well, Burton took the lead after Bayliss almost scored. Basically, I'm pretty sure his shot was heading for the top corner after a deflected effort from Bright, and their man nodded it away. And then their goal, everyone thought it was offside, but Tom Davies played the guy miles onside, and he just pulled it back. And one of those ones where our two centre-backs are standing there staring at the ball, and neither of them looks at the massive striker between them and thinks, what's the most likely way the ball's going to go in here? Probably that massive lad between us. And both of them just stare at the fake Reece Alasani crossing it in and think, as long as we just watch the ball really closely, then it definitely won't go in. And before they know it, like the tapping was like comedy casual, just like the guy can't believe that it's made its way to him.
Was that when Mason kind of stumbled or felt like he got fouled? Was that goal? I made that up just before that, because you said it was offside. They thought it was offside, and my memory of that goal was that he kind of stumbled, or if I completed that was something else.
I think Mason was on.
Let me have a look.
Well, yeah, that is his. It is hit on his side of the pitch. I can't quite remember what his involvement.
This is superb podcasting, guys. Sorry about bringing that into the...
You're listening to the Dead Air podcast.
Let's pretend I haven't asked that question. But then also, talking about fake Reece Alasani, so that's Marcus Harness. Before that, did anybody notice that he was having an absolute nightmare of a game? And then he was just almost handed the chance to redeem himself. He was so out of it. The ball was flying under his feet. He couldn't control a thing. He was just knocking out of play and everything. I was like, okay, this is a real opportunity to stamp your authority out over this guy and really sort of shake his confidence. And then we just essentially gave him the ball to cross in for assist. And then he just looked a different player afterwards, which was a missed opportunity, I would suggest.
Embarrassingly, I've got to admit that players on opposing teams have to do something pretty phenomenally good or bad for me to notice them at all. All I can see is 11 sky blue shirts, unless there's like the Queen is playing for them or someone. Like
The Queen.
Just they really do have to pull something special out of the bag. I think it's just something about lower league football, isn't it? It's just like, who are these, like Bill, no one, like I don't care. No,
it's hard to concentrate on the opposition passing the ball out of play when your own players are passing the ball out of play. Or both teams had quite a few spells where they were just passing the ball sort of aimlessly. Because there was I don't know if you're about to go into, didn't they have another chance where we basically, I think it was Bright or was it Mason, played a 35-yard crossfield pass straight to their striker in the centre of the pitch. And there was just those, it was quite a low quality game at times, wasn't it, with two teams who weren't playing particularly well.
Yeah, I think I noted that one down. It's Mason gifts them a break with awful pass. So I think that's probably it.
Yeah, that could be it, yeah.
Well, I've just realised what I got confused about. You know, their disallowed goal, that was one where Mason went down. So Harness sorted him out. And yeah, it could have been 2-0. But yeah, that's just to clarify again. So if anybody's listening to this and was desperately shouting at the radio, well, not the radio, me, I've corrected myself.
There's a really good save from Burge in there as well.
That was quite a lucky non-allowed, because it did hit him on the hand, but you watch and you're like, I don't think he handled it, did he? It just hit him on the hand.
Well, we're lucky that nobody knows the fucking rules anymore, do we?
Yeah. But I think if his hand had been in a different position, it'd have hit him on the chest. He would. What I mean is the handball was an integral part of the goal. It just hit him on the hand.
But Paul, what shape was his silhouette?
Yeah. What does his heart tell you?
Was he making the face of a snake with his silhouette? Because that means that you are definitely offside and it's a handball.
Yeah. But I mean, at that point, you just like hang on till half time. Just Burton are clearly the team who are going to score at this point, because they should have scored that. They had a couple of other ones, didn't they? Where, considering how good our defence has been, I said in those three games where we played Accrington, Rochdale, and Walsall, where the keeper barely had anything to do in those 270 minutes. for the defence to fall apart as dramatically as they did against. Wasn't Burton one of Burton's strikers their right back or something?
There's some guy who plays everywhere, yeah.
Yeah, so it wasn't even like we were playing against the top.
Akins, yeah.
Yeah.
He played right back for the last time.
Yeah, so it's not even like we're playing against the cream of the cream. We're playing against Burton's right back up front, and our defence is completely falling apart. It was just very strange.
It was strange. When we came out after half time, though, we looked completely different team, which was nice because the first version of us wasn't particularly nice to watch. Bayliss just was a man on a mission, and Burton were obviously content to try and do what they did at their ground and just kind of see this game out, which they did in unbelievably professional fashion before. So they obviously fancied their chances of doing it again. And we kind of started setting up against their banks of defenders by just passing sideways and sideways. But Bayliss is good enough to break up that pattern by kind of dropping into these little areas where no one picked him up. And that was how his goal came about. He kind of was on the last man and then came short, turned it out wide, cross came in, and then there's a kind of debate whether Bakayoko played a beautifully weighted control into the path of Bayliss, or whether he kind of got tackled from two angles and it just kind of spilled out to Bayliss. I think it would have been a penalty actually if it hadn't gone to Bayliss, because neither of them get the ball and Bakayoko definitely gets clattered from behind. But Bayliss does manage to slot it under the keeper. And then we were level, which kicked off a kind of strange 5 minutes whereby I hadn't realised that the ref had gone off injured and there was a new ref. And so he'd obviously been given the kind of book of yellow cards from his mate. And Bakayoko, in kind of a pretty innocuous area of the pitch, like the guy's running sideways, Bakayoko doesn't really tackle him so much as like get run over by him, like, and then just.
You mean Bright?
Topples. Sorry, yeah, I mean Bright. Just kind of topples backwards, and as he's falling, you can see the cogs turning in his head, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna yellow card, aren't I?" So then, like, kind of squirms around on the floor a bit. The referee obviously thinks that's a yellow card, and then when he gets his book out, he's probably like, "Oh shit! The first thing I've got to do is send this guy off." And it was kind of a weird atmosphere because the crowd went quiet because I instantly realised that it was Bright, and I think that everyone's slowly realising what's about to happen. And then Bright gets up. Their players really harangued the ref, like you'd hear their little man screaming at the ref to send him off, which is, I mean, fine, but like it's just a bit nasty, isn't it?
You mean what Mickey Doyle would have done?
I was going to say, when in Rome.
Yeah, it's like that was
my backyard.
That was one. There was two things that sort of made me chuckle on that. One of them was that hypocrisy. It's like, what you can't do that, and it's like everyone loved Doyle for doing that. Everyone praised Doyle for doing that. The other one was in the second.
Paul, like, you're watching the wrong sport if you're going to make points like that.
Yeah,
come on.
And then in the second, later on, Tom Davis got booked. And it's, what's he been booked for? Right. And it's like, he's booked because he's basically flung his arm at the referee. So you either say that you can't argue with the referee, which he's done and been booked for. So Tom Davis is booking it. Not as bad as Raheem Sterling, who I thought was going to throw the ball at the linesman at one point. But he managed to miss that, didn't he? He threw it the other way. And the players are obviously getting irate, but you can't, if you're going to do that, then the referee's all in his power. He's got to book you for that sort of dissent, hasn't he? Isn't that what everyone wants?
Yeah, I don't like dissent. Get the book out.
Get the book out and throw it at him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Laurie, carry on. Where else do you want to go from Burton?
Well, then the 5 mad minutes were completed when Liam Kelly passed it. Oh, no, I've missed out the Thomas chance. We've already talked about that loads. Thomas misses this pivotal moment to decide our season.
Absolute sitter. Call it an absolute sitter, Laurie.
It's what really doesn't help him is that he actually creates the perfect angle because the keeper hasn't really narrowed it that much. So there's a lot of goal to aim at. and the keeper doesn't even really stick his foot out in the right way. So it is an extremely good chance. And in fairness to him, it's very close to going in, but it's also very much not going in at any point. Yeah, that's enough on that. And then they score because Kelly is under a little bit of pressure, kind of bounces a ball back to Lee Burge, who I never really know, but I'm pretty sure he's left-footed, isn't he?
Yeah.
And he kind of thinks about it for a second with 2 Burton players in front of him, no Cov players between the Burton players and him, and just like, it's a real baddie. He just slaps it straight to number 4, and because he's number 4, I'm assuming he's not used to curling balls into the top corner, but it's a really good finish, like instantaneously. Or are you going to slag me off with this kind of goal of the season stuff again? But it's a tidy finish.
It's all right.
And yeah, Burge doesn't even kind of hold his head in his hands. He just kind of runs back to get the ball, probably adrenaline just like absolutely pumping, thinking, oh my God, this is going to be bad. And
he's
then
really into his kicking first time at the moment, which I would suggest on that pitch when you're lacking confidence is almost the worst thing you can do. But the alternative is you take a touch, which he's probably not confident to do either. So all round, it's a difficult situation. But to keep swinging your foot first time at balls, or your wrong foot at balls bobbling back at you, it just feels like you're asking for trouble.
And it's his least favourite skill on the football pitch is kicking.
Yeah.
And so to back himself, when he's short of confidence on his wrong foot under pressure, I mean, don't. But
I should say, didn't the outfield players not take a little bit of responsibility for just the number of times they passed the ball back to him?
Yeah.
Just clear it yourself. Just fucking. It just frustrates me sometimes where they could punt it themselves. It's, oh no, we'll get back to Burge. And it just. Well, it was one in the first half, wasn't it? Where we obviously play out from the back. That's our main aim. So. But Burge had a set over a goal kicker. He had the ball at his feet, and he passed it to Tom Davis, who was playing no attention, and it goes out for a throw-in. And he just like, you can't, don't bother. Just take the keeper out of it. Just ignore him. Play in front of him. Do anything you can. But I know you could sort of say that it doesn't matter, and I'm not trying to defend Burge here. I think he should have taken a touch, but because the game was completely manic at that point, we'd just gone down to 10 men. The sort of emphasis of the game had changed. The whole atmosphere of the game had changed. Kelly's got to deal with that himself. Just fine touch. Just get rid of it instead of putting an extra bit of pressure on us.
To be fair, he was facing away from it. He was just facing at his own goal. But I think you're right. I mean, there was a lot of just passing the buck, I think, or if anything, on that pitch where they're all struggling. We were trying to be this sort of attentive team, and yet when they're in trouble, they just give these really shit balls back to Burge. And he's the one, the one guy on the pitch who is least comfortable with his feet is being expected to either pass out from the back on that pitch or deal with a really difficult ball. And it's harsh on them, I think.
Any final Burton thoughts? It does feel like we should probably move on. No, there we go. Okay.
No.
So, right, let's speak to Dom, who's going to do a double preview for us, and then we'll finish off with some Twittery stuff. Hi, Dom.
Hiya.
Thanks for joining us. Right, okay. Fleetwood in the first of 2 games in what will be 3 in quite quick succession. What can you tell us about them?
Yeah, so quite interesting. I was reading today that even though they're just 1 point behind us, Joey Burton, the manager, has already said that winning promotion is impossible, and they'll be using this game to experiment with their squad. So, interesting motivational tactic. I mean, there's an argument that it's going to demotivate the squad, but then also it completely takes the pressure off the game for them. And judging by performance against Burton on Friday, we're playing a little bit of pressure on us, a bit of edginess, and that it's had a negative impact. And especially the way Fleetwood is set up, where they're a very good counter-attacking side and not as great when they have to come out and play on the front foot. They've got the joint worst record at winning points from losing positions with Bradford, They've picked up just 1 point from losing positions this season. So they're going to, if they're going to have that freedom to not have to come out and get a result against us, that might actually play into their hands.
Who are the players we should look out for?
So they generally play with a 4-3-3 system, but within that attacking three, there's sort of a strike partnership situation going on between Ched Evans and Paddy Madden. Ched Evans is the one leading the line. He's a very hard-working and physical kind of striker who can really wear down defenders. Really sort of good presence in attack for this level. And then Paddy Madden, who's generally been seen as sort of an out-and-out penalty area striker, has been playing on the right wing and is starting to develop his game a little bit more beyond just being an excellent finisher. And then on the left of that front three could well be Ashley Hunter, who has 10 assists this season, which is one of the best assist numbers in the division. He's a very quick player, got very good delivery, both from set pieces and open play. And then an interesting development in recent weeks has been they've moved their winger Wes Burns to right back, and that's been pretty successful, especially in that they have Paddy Madden playing on the right wing. It means he has to do less work out wide and actually get in the penalty area. So that's been interesting, although you'd suspect that leave a few gaps in behind, which we could be looking to exploit with Jordi Harula or whoever's playing on the left wing.
Fleetwood's big headline thing, obviously, is having Joey Barton in charge. What have you made of him so far?
I think it's been just about par from him. If you look at Fleetwood's squad and resources, I think 10th place would be a reasonable finish. I suppose question marks against him, again, recovering points from losing positions, and then just a few things with his management of a couple of players, most notably Carl Dempsey, who's a really good creative midfielder, just hasn't been able to fit him into the system. And he's actually sent him off on loan to Peterborough, who are above Fleetwood in the table, which is a bit odd. But I think he's starting to impose himself on the side. He's doing reasonably okay, considering everything. It's just, he's a manager now.
And then after Fleetwood, it's the club where it's 2009 every day of the year. Darren Ferguson's third spell at Peterborough?
Yeah, third spell.
What can we make of them?
Yeah, so just about the most entirely predictable managerial sacking this season in Steve Evans was then replaced by the most entirely predictable managerial appointment with Darren Ferguson. I suppose in defence of Steve Evans, quite harshly sacked, perhaps on a similar level to Darren Moore, where looking from the outside, at the time when Evans was sacked, Peterborough were in the playoffs, but they hadn't been playing well for a couple of months before that, and it just looked like it was starting to fall apart. Ferguson has come in, hasn't really improved matters. In fact, they've only won 2 of the 7 games he's been in charge of, and they've been losing to a lot of the relegation candidates. So it just looks like their season is starting to fall off cliff a little bit. Although, depending on their result on Tuesday, they're going to be banging in the mix for the playoffs when we play them regardless.
And for them, obviously, fans of saying the name Tony will realise, of course, that they have Ivan Toney up front. But who else should we be on the lookout for?
I mean, they really have an embarrassment of attacking riches, and that's kind of partially the problem for them. They've got, basically the transfer policy at the club over 5 or 6 seasons has just been to sign the most talented players they can find from the lower leagues and try and mash them together into a squad. And that's kind of been where their problems have arisen, where there isn't really an identifiable plan or style of play that you can get from the constituent parts of their squad. At the moment, they're sort of trying to fit Marcus Maddison and Lee Tomlin into the same side. And I think they're quite interesting examples of the kind of players that thrive at Peterborough. Maddison, who's been linked for years and years for a move to a championship and has never quite managed to get a transfer through. I mean, just an absolutely enthralling individual talent. The definition of mercurial, lanky, just absolutely incredible ability to strike a ball from open play or set pieces. But he's someone who perhaps people have identified that he would want a team built around him rather than trying to fit into a team unit. Then Lee Tomlin, who 4 or 5 years ago I was seeing play for Peterborough, was probably one of the best players I've ever seen at this level, made a step up to the Championship and has had a reasonable impact at a few clubs, but it's dropping down to League One again because, again, he hasn't found a way to fit into a team unit and is the kind of individual player who wants to be the one flair player in a side. Interestingly, earlier in this season, he was playing for Cardiff's under-23 side and was getting sent off against us. So, he's in sort of the downward spiral of his career, even though he's an incredibly talented player, and an incredibly talented player still. And then behind Maddison and Tomlin, you've got, obviously, Ivan Toney in attack, who is currently outside, but partially because he got sent off a few games ago. Matt Godden, very good goal poacher, and then look at the sort of wide and creative midfield options. Carl Dempsey, who I've mentioned, Laurie Reid, George Cooper and Sariki Dembele, and Joe Ward as well. It's just like, how would you fit that all into the same team? And that's been the problem for them. Although when they're in the mood, they can just really rattle the goals past teams.
Marcus Maddison with 15 assists this season. That's a lot, isn't it?
Just incredible, and particularly because he's a good set piece taker, and Steve Evans spent most of the summer bringing in 6'2", 6'4" players, so that's sort of worked out well, giving him targets to play off. But yeah, just an incredible individual talent who really has been overdue a move up to the Championship.
Finally, before I let you go, how realistic is a playoff push in your opinion?
I think in terms of the situation itself, there's no reason why we can't back ourselves, particularly with these two games coming up against teams who are in similar positions to us. And Peterborough, who if we beat, we'll haul in. But I just think, again, judging off Friday's performance, I think this team is a little youthful and inexperienced. Obviously, we've got quite a lot of injuries at the moment, which isn't happening at a good time for us, considering the importance of these two games on our hopes. So, as probably we suspected a couple of weeks ago, I think the playoffs, looking at it logically, are out of reach. Although, if we approach these games with the right attitude, we're going to be right in there.
Right in there. Right, okay. Thank you very much. I'll speak to you next week.
Right, speak to you then.
Okay, thanks, Dom. Right then, so let's have a look to see what we've got then. Did anybody notice anything that was worthy of discussion?
If one of our players was 3 1-on-1, who would be the person you'd most like it to be and least like it to be?
Laura, you can start that off.
Most like it to be definitely Hawula, because he seems semi-deep. I can think of a few examples where he's slotted away one-on-one chances. Least likely, probably Tom Davies.
I think Tom Davies, but we've talked about.
Could it be a bouncing ball that he could head in?
Well, we've talked about the elegant shins of Tom Davies before, haven't we? I think whilst he wouldn't be at the top, I do feel like he'd have a good go at shitting it right, strong and true. Neil?
I'm going to go a little left field here, quite literally. I don't mind Shipley when he's facing the keeper. I think he's shown enough ability to kind of put the ball in the net in difficult situations. So, weirdly, one-on-one, I'd fancy him to find a route through. Also, Bayliss, because I think he struggles when he's shooting sort of edge of the area and when he's it's all a bit tight. But I think he's able to put the ball away when he's facing the keeper as well. So those are my two options.
Paul?
Sterling. I just think you put Sterling through 9 times out of 10, he'd find a corner. And least likely player, I'm going to go with the obvious joke, but it's definitely Luke Thomas.
Is this when Sterling
Because you
would be
hate
playing
him.
centre mid?
Sterling's obviously just class, so he's not going to be ruffled when he's 3-1-1. We've seen Luke Thomas try enough. The obvious answer is Tom Davis it'd be quite interesting to see Bakayoko 3-1-1 with a keeper and see what he did with it. And he's a striker.
He would be my bottom choice.
Bakayoko.
Yeah. I'd rather see Dom Hyman running through. I just can't imagine. Every time I've seen Bakayoko take more than one touch in the box, it looks like he's playing a different sport to anyone else that's ever played it. I don't, like I say, I genuinely think he would be in my first choice team at the moment, and I think his presence makes the team better. But his individual, he's like the anti-Bright Bakary. Is that he is like profoundly ungood at football, Bakayoko, but that he is making the team better. Whereas Bakary, to all intents and purposes, is like a tremendous footballer who just doesn't happen to help us along as a team. So yeah, I would say Bakayoko. I'm not sure he's ever been one-on-one with a keeper as well, which is ludicrous, obviously, for a striker. But yeah, he would be bottom for me.
Has anyone seen what JCH has been up to since he left?
Doing bits, mate.
Shitting goals.
What? I actually just tweeted at a Bristol Rovers supporters club today just to be like, can you just let me know what's happening? Like, where is he playing? Like, is he
Good
like
player.
fox guarding like in Wembley's or? It's amazing, isn't it? He scored a hat trick and he scored again on the weekend.
What are we thinking? Get rid of him.
But ultimately, I guess, the thing is with him is that he is angry at a world that hath slighted him, isn't he?
Yeah.
And that presumably the indignity of being booted out by Klopp twice is now been sufficient to like fuel his anger.
That will see him through to the end of the season, won't it?
Yeah, he's gonna have to find out some new way of what's it. People are gonna have to, like, if I was his manager, I'd be pulling pranks on him during the game.
Have you seen he had a little bet with Bakayoko about the North London derby?
I love
and they're
that.
going to
They're going out in Bristol.
Carluccio's or San Carlos in Bristol.
Amazing. I love that. I wish
What
we
do
could
they
see
chat
that.
about at dinner?
I don't know.
JCH's just showing videos of his goals to Bakayoko. And again.
Bakayoko being like, what's that? Oh dear, yeah. I don't know who I'd have first choice. I guess I love Tom Bayliss, don't I? I feel like Tom Bayliss would do a good job. Shipley's probably a good answer. Rich O asks, was Kelly more culpable for our defeat than Burge? We sort of hinted at that a couple of times. Laurie?
He did have a particularly bad game. Just a lot, gave the ball away a lot, and was largely outshone by Bayliss, which normally isn't the way Kelly normally holds up his end of the bargain, but it was very apparent that he was having a bad game. But no, I wouldn't blame him for us losing, because plenty of people had bad games.
Yeah.
Neil, something I think you touched on. Lee Bradbury asking, why can't we take corners? We had at least 6 or 7 men in the 6-yard box for one of them, with Kelly waiting just outside the box with a load of space for a ball for him to run onto. Naturally, Bright hit the first man.
I just think we've got these almost big-head players who fancy themselves as free kick and corner takers, and the only credential they've really got is they've come from a bigger club. You got Thomas, who fancies himself as a free kick taker, and he just hasn't really got the technique. The only people I really trust on corners and stuff would probably be Liam Kelly, because I think he's got a decent enough technique he'll get the ball into an area at least. But you've got Bright, who's just trying these really whipped corners, and he's just scuffing every one. I think it's a daft decision having them on him, really. So weird. I just think we haven't really got too many specialists. Shipley's another one who can probably be trusted to at least put the ball in an area. But
that's what I was going to say. I thought that when Shipley came in, we were like, oh, it's good that we've got someone who can take a corner. Yeah. And then subsequently I know that he's in and out of the team, but subsequently if he's on the pitch, it doesn't seem like he's allowed to. And you kind of think, well, I don't really get that.
It's at least repeatable technique with him. I mean, I think he goes deep more often than not.
Yeah, the drifty deep ones.
He could do a bit more with them, but I think you can. There's a technique there. Something about left-footed players, so you can trust them a little bit more. He just seems to have something where if he's just going to keep doing it over and over, at least you know he's going to get the ball airborne.
Quite. Blah, 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 blah. Anything else? I think that's it for questions. Anyone got anything? Actually, I was asked to plug a thing, wasn't I?
Before you plug the thing, obviously we all pass on our thoughts to Dominic Hyam.
Yes.
That sounds horrific. And, Mark Robbins did the honourable thing and when sat with him till his family came, and all credit to him as well. But, just hearing that news. We're a bit of an odd club because you never really know why players aren't in the team. But to hear about the reason that he wasn't did sort of put things a bit in perspective. Not only that, obviously, I think we all think very highly of him as a player this season. He's really come on, but the most important thing is that he is well, he's safe, and he will be returning to the football pitch when it could have been a lot worse.
What did happen? I don't. It was in a car accident.
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently 100 mile an hour, someone went into him.
What?
Oh, wow, God. Really?
Yeah, so I think he was in I think by the sounds of it, he could have come out of it a lot worse than he did. He came out of it obviously bad enough to be in hospital, and things were serious, but they weren't. I don't think he's got any, from what I understand, any sort of lasting injuries or anything. I think he's going to be able to walk away from it with a story to tell, but it could have been far worse.
Oh yeah, geez. Well, get well soon, yeah. Okay, the thing that I was asked to plug was from Sky Blue Hub at SkyCCFC on Twitter. Bredworth United Football Club, Bedworth WF. Am I saying Bredworth?
You may.
You're doing a great
Sounds
job, whatever you're doing.
Bedworth WF proudly present An Evening with Noel Whelan plus Dave Bennett, which has got massive undertones of An Evening with Alan Partridge plus Sue Cook. We have to tell you now, Dave Bennett has pulled out. So he's
since this announcement started?
No, that's an Alan Partridge reference rather than a Dave Bennett reference.
Okay.
That is going to be actually top class, isn't it? Them two together.
Yeah.
My favourite, in fact, one of my favourite moments of this season was Noel Whelan being a guest on CWR and being quite good value, and him laughing at Villa being behind him.
Yeah.
One of the most childish pieces of co-commentary that I've heard, possibly in all of football journalism. So yeah, fair play to him. It'd be interesting to see what tales of football and, let's face it, drinking these two.
You see, Whelan's got quite a reputation now as a co-commentator. But when you think about it, he's actually a terrible co-commentator because all he does is scream inaudibly when they score a goal. You just, if you're listening to that match and wanting to know what's going on, aside from knowing that a goal's happened, you've got no other option. It's just sort of Whelan screaming for a good 5-10 seconds, and it makes good social media content. But for those people who are maybe not that interested in that sort of stuff, I imagine they might be a little bit frustrated with all the screaming, shouting. But far bit for me to be a killjoy on that. He is a good co-commentator, honest. 2019
social media content, isn't that the real quiz?
That exactly.
In all seriousness, actually, on a final thing is, I'll tell you whose punditry I've actually been enjoying legitimately is Shefford.
Yes.
Who I think does a pretty good job. He did the Luton game for Sky, and he was on CWR recently. And actually, he always seems like he's got not a huge amount to say, but there was it. But actually, when he talks, it's all kind of informed and sane and reasonable. He can actually string a sentence together and everything, can't he?
He looks at ease.
He's quite good, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Anyone else got anything to plug?
I do have, not to plug, but I would like to do a shout out. It's a bit of a weird one. We're really Twitter centric on this podcast, so everything and our of references are all about the fact that it's on Twitter. But we do have a website, and there's a comment section, and there's a guy, an avid listener called Robbie Leslie, who comments quite a lot. I just wanted to sort of give him a shout out and say hello. I do read what you say. I don't respond because I'm useless, but continue to comment, and we do appreciate your feedback. And I thought I'd give you a shout out because, why not?
Yeah, we do. We really do appreciate all that stuff. And occasionally we get an email, and that's fine, and that's nice. But Twitter's just really, it's there, isn't it? And it's very easy. So yeah, you're right. We should probably try and do a better job of being more all things considered. But there you go. Okay, right. Thank you then, Neil.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you, Laurie.
Cheers, mate.
And thank you, listeners, no matter what media or however you're interacting with us. Thank you very much. Bye.